It's Friday, August 1st, 2025. When it comes to Russiagate, it's always the people you most expect. Also, another round of Ask or Tell Me Anything. That's next on the AM Update. Well, we've made it to the end of another week and the beginning of a month. Happy August to you. July, and my estimation, just absolutely dragged by. Just one of those months. April, May, June really shot by, but July was just one of those months. Very hot everywhere around the country. Very busy, a lot busier than usual, but nevertheless, here we are. Amidst the dog days of summer in August. Thank you again for listening to the AM Update this week. I would covet your 5-star reviews on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen. Even if you've already reviewed the show, please do so again if you would. First story on our Friday 5-pack, it's always the people you most expect. Hillary Clinton signed off on a plan hatched by a top campaign advisor to smear then-candidate Donald Trump during the 2016 campaign, according to explosive intelligence files declassified on Thursday. It was an effort to distract from her own mounting email scandal during that campaign. The 24-page intelligence annex was compiled from memos and emails obtained by the Obama administration in the lead up to the election day that laid out confidential conversations between leaders of the Democratic National Committee, including then-Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz and liberal billionaire George Soros's Open Society Foundations. The plot, the brainchild of the Clinton campaign's then foreign policy advisor Julianne Smith, included raising the theme of Putin's support for Trump and subsequently steering public opinion toward the notion that it needs to equate the Russian leader's political influence campaign with actual hacking, of election infrastructure. That sounds familiar. Let me read that paragraph over again. According to these newly declassified intel documents, the plot was the brainchild of the Clinton campaign's then foreign policy advisor Julianne Smith, included, quote, raising the theme of Putin's support for Trump, end quote, and, quote, subsequently steering public opinion toward the notion that it needs to equate, end quote, the Russian leader's political influence campaign with actual hacking of election infrastructure. These documents note that HRC, that would be Hillary Rodham Clinton, signed off on this plan. That sounds exactly like Russiagate and the Russian collusion hoax. That sounds like exactly how it went down. We're going to create this false sense that Vladimir Putin secretly admires or loves Donald Trump for whatever reason, and we're going to concoct a narrative that Russians are going to hack the election. That's exactly what the Russian collusion hoax was, and there it is, the smoking gun of all smoking guns. A gun is on fire in these newly declassified intel documents. President Trump is very, very disappointed with the pace of his nominations, making it through the Senate. He posted on Truth Social yesterday a graphic. I'll read that for you in just a little bit. This is what the Democrats are doing to our nation. They're refusing to approve some of the best nominees in the history of our country. If we had George Washington and Abraham Lincoln lined up, they would do everything in their power to delay and disapprove. This should never be allowed to happen, and it has never happened before. The graphic President Trump attached is the percentage of civilian nominees confirmed by voice vote, that would be a quicker way of voting, or unanimous consent in the first term. H.W. Bush, 98% voice vote or unanimous consent. Clinton, 98%. W, 90%. Obama, 90%. Trump first administration, 65%. Biden administration, 57%. And the Trump administration number 2, 0%. None of his civilian nominees have been approved via voice vote or unanimous consent. Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader John Thune says, don't pay attention to that. He's doing a great job.
Mr. President, I know that August is approaching, but we still have some serious work to do here in Washington. We need to make further progress on appropriations. And we have a number of President Trump's nominations to get through. Mr. President, despite a historic level of obstruction from Democrats, Senate Republicans have been maintaining a brisk pace on confirming President Trump's nominees. We've confirmed 107 civilian nominees, nearly doubling the pace in President Trump's first administration at this point. And we've done it with good old-fashioned hard work.
So there's Senate Majority Leader John Thune says, hey, we're doing a great job. Actually, we're doing a great job. You know, we're moving at the pace of honey instead of molasses. So look at us. Let's get a helmet sticker elsewhere in the Senate, I should say. Checking in on Elizabeth Warren, who took a little fall yesterday on the Senate floor. She thought that a desk near the front of the chamber was actually like bolted to the ground. She tried to lean up against it. It was not that secure, and she fell over. Didn't look like that bad of a fall. Some people were characterizing it as a nasty fall, but I think she's going to be okay. So back at the White House, President Trump announced a new effort to restore the presidential standard for fitness in our nation's schools. He was joined by a cadre of famous athletes, some current, some not, including Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker. How he got out of training camp for this, I don't know.
Obviously very excited to be here. Thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to serve on the council. Just excited to do my part to help make America healthy again, to help our youth be healthy and thrive and grow up and be great citizens of this country and be great family members and contribute to this great country. And I think you have to be strong in mind, in body, and soul. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Butker was flanked by HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., J.D. Vance, a couple of other athletes as well for the establishing of the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. So that's pretty cool. Story number 4. Dramatic testimony has been revealed exclusively to Fox News, giving new details from the scene of a horrific massacre Sunday by jihadists allied to the Islamic State of at least 49 Christians worshiping in a church in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. There's an ongoing swath of killings of Christians across Nigeria and the DRC, reportedly more than 4,000 in Nigeria in approximately the last year. This barbaric killing in the DRC has led a White House spokesperson to tell Fox, quote, "The Trump administration condemns in the strongest terms this horrific violence against Christians. 9 of those who died were decapitated in Sunday's DRC attack, and they were children. Several other children, the number isn't clear, were also abducted. The attackers were members of the Islamist Allied Democratic Forces, a sanctioned rebel group with roots in Uganda." Just horrific, horrific details. This is not the first time this year where we have had mass killings, mass slaughter of Christians on the African continent at the hands of Islamists. Keep those in the persecuted church, of course, in your prayer. Finally, on this Friday 5-pack, we go to Nicole Shanahan, former running mate for RFK Jr., and new Christian as well, who talks about the misconception of today's progressivism versus what it was in the last generation. She spoke recently to the Lincoln Club of Orange County, California.
What's being pushed today under the banner of progressivism and liberalism appears an awful lot like ego, corporate interest, top-down control, communism. Yeah. It's not about empowering communities. It's about consolidating power. And somewhere along the way, the Democratic agenda shifted from focusing on the people to serving a very different set of priorities. But here's the truth. American liberalism has always had this soft spot for centralized control, and it's made the movement vulnerable to communist inclinations. This happened before. So next year marks the 60th anniversary of RFK Sr.'s Day of Affirmation speech. And even back then, the Democratic Party was already grappling with communist infiltration. RFK said, he laid it out, July of 1966, he laid it out. He said, "I am unalterably opposed to communism because it exalts the state over the individual and over the family. And because its system contains a lack of freedom of speech, of protest, of religion, of the press, which is characteristic of a totalitarian regime." He then says, and this is important for us, "The way of opposition to communism, however, is not to imitate its dictatorship, but to enlarge human freedom." Yeah, let's just, he's up in heaven, and we are grateful to him for getting the communists out of the Democratic Party then, and we need someone to get the communists out of the Democratic Party now. RFK Sr. made that distinction between reform, good, Communism, bad. And then, as now, many people have a hard time seeing the difference. He was able to draw that firm line in the sand when others couldn't, because he stated emphatically, communism would never belong in the Democratic Party. You know, if only the party had consistently listened to the brilliant words of RFK Sr., then we would not be in this situation today. The same challenge lies before us, and we will rise to it. It's not enough to simply remind liberals that communism isn't reform. We must also take real, purposeful steps to protect our constitutional liberties and defend the freedom of the individual and the family.
That is Nicole Shanahan addressing the Orange County Lincoln Club. She makes some interesting observations and commentary there. And I'll just reiterate, it is not a good thing at all for one party in a two-party system to be infiltrated to the level that it is, or at all. Or at all. I mean, it was 1966, some of those quotes from RFK Sr. that Nicole Shanahan just read. It was 1966. It's never a good thing when one party in a two-party system is infiltrated by such an evil and wicked ideology. When we come back, it'll be your turn to ask or tell me anything. That's coming up next. Ask or Tell Me Anything. One final segment this week on the AM Update. You can tell me anything you want as far as news. Maybe it's from your neck of the woods, or ask me any question you would like. We'll begin with this. Tiny Johnny asks, has your wife influenced you more on what you eat or maybe on how you exercise? So I'll take that first part. So on what we eat, we discussed this before we got married. I mean, our attitude when it comes to what we consume, what we put on our bodies, is everything in moderation, and that cuts both ways. Everything in moderation, that cuts both ways. So do we eat very clean, or just at least make an effort day in and day out to eat clean? Yes, we do. Does that cost a little bit more money? It's not as much money as I think you're told. Does it cost more money? Yes. Does that add up over time? Yes. Is it worth it? We think yes. We're convicted that yes, it is worth it. But we also have the understanding that we live in a fallen world, that our food sources are going to be fallen as well, and that there is the risk that you run if you're trying to eat healthy of going to the nth degree and ending up like that. Oh, I can't even remember. I think it's Brian Johnson is his name. The dude who looks like a vampire who keeps infusing or transfusing blood in order to live longer. I think that's his name, Brian Johnson. Who is that? Brian Johnson. I think that's his name. So he's that tech guy who wants to live forever, and he does all of this crazy stuff, and that purportedly helps him to live longer, helps his cells regenerate faster or something. I don't know. So on one end of the spectrum, you could just be a fat slob, nothing in moderation. On the other end of the spectrum, there's Brian Johnson, who does not believe, I guess, that we live in a fallen world and thinks that the human body, or at least human health, is perfectible. And I'm just telling you, it's not. So I know that doesn't really specifically answer your question. We still have candy every now and then. Try not to have candy with food dyes in it at all. We still have candy every now and then. My wife still buys me Reese's fairly regularly. It's just that I don't have the desire for them all that often, like every day or anything like that. But on the other hand, we don't take living clean to a neurosis level because we understand that this world is fallen and therefore our food sources are fallen. I'll just add this, though, as kind of an addendum to that. There is quite a chasm between being poisoned, like being poisoned by your food supply, and the neurosis that I'm talking about, where like you just think everything is trying to kill you, and you got to do blood transfusions in order to be truly healthy. Okay, I think it's attainable when it comes to, I've talked about it over and over again, the red dyes or the dyes, artificial dyes, that RFK Jr. and others are trying to get out of the nation's food supply. I just think there are things that you can do to avoid actually being poisoned. I think a better way of saying this, there's a vast chasm between a fallen food supply and actual poison. There's a middle ground there, and that's essentially what we're trying to find. You know, I saw this post from RFK Jr. The other day. He was in the courtyard of the FDA headquarters. There's a stone bench in this courtyard, and inscribed in stone on the stone bench were the words, "The devil has got a hold of our food supply," at the FDA headquarters. No idea what the backstory is there, but I think that kind of sums it up. There's a lot of not just unhealthy things, but poisonous things in our food supply that we've been told are just not poisonous. Country Squire says, getting tired of the term mid used to describe the appearance of women. I take it as they are saying being normal, regular, average, a real person is something to be ashamed about. Yeah, I really hate this. I mean, I just absolutely hate it, detest it. There's just this trend. Hey, I'm going to be trendy. I'm going to be, this is my very special take. Cindy says Sweeney is not attractive. No, you're just a moron. You're just a moron or homosexual. That's what I say. But I think part of this is the porn brain that way too many men, if they really truly mean that a woman is mid when they say it, meaning average, there's nothing wrong with average. Average is beautiful too. That side of the species just tends to be more beautiful than not. But if you're saying that just an average looking woman, which is a beautiful woman, is mid because they don't conform to XYZ desires for what you have in a woman, I think that's also indicative of porn brain too. Bullfrog says, who was the fourth person in studio during the first show in the new set at the day job? That was one of the engineers. You know, we had a few snafus at the beginning of this show, so I don't have 6 different hands, and so that's pretty typical, par for the course. There's just going to be a few engineers around for that first show to make sure we're off the ground and running, but yep, that was just one of the engineers who set up the studio. Daniel says, what did you smoke this summer? Anything you tried for the first time? I smoked pork ribs for the first time, and while they weren't bad, I've already got some ideas to make attempt number 2 even better. If you've done pork ribs, I'm open to suggestions. Well, yes, let's start with the first question. I've done a brisket this summer, which turned out pretty well. I've done a couple pork butts, just did one last weekend, one of my favorite things. And I've done pork ribs 2 or 3 times this summer. So to answer your second question, the 3-2-1 method for pork ribs has really never done me wrong. 3-2-1. So 3 hours, just smoked at 225, 2 hours covered in foil, and then 1 hour back in the open again. Now to prepare them, I'm sure you do this as well. Make sure you get that silver skin off of there. I have found that using just a paper towel to pull that silver skin off the underside of the ribs does the best job. Also, contrary to maybe conventional wisdom, you really don't want to leave your pork ribs in the rub overnight. That is different than what you would do with probably a pork butt or some other cuts of meat that you would smoke. You want to apply the seasoning, an hour max before throwing it on the smoker. Now, there are bones, obviously, that helps with moisture retention, but there's just not enough of them. It's just not enough fat and sinew that breaks down, and that's a 6-hour cook, so you're not really rendering much of anything. It should be a fairly tender cut of meat, so you just want to do everything you can to keep all that moisture in there. So, yeah, don't apply the rub more than an hour before you throw them on the smoker. I like the Meat Church line. I'm starting to love them more and more. I also like Kinders. You can find Kinders at Costco, but various rubs that you can find for these. But I like Holy Cow the best. I think it's supposed to be for beef only, but I use it for everything. The Holy Cow rub from Meat Church, and then also the Blend by Kinders, 2 of my favorite rubs for basically anything. So yeah, prep. Make sure you get all of that silver skin off there to the best of your ability. Do not season, do not rub more than an hour before you want to throw those ribs on the grill. And then the 3-2-1 method, 3 hours, no covering, 2 hours covered, then the last hour covered. And oh, by the way, that last hour, I always smother the ribs in barbecue sauce for that final uncovered hour on the grill. If you want to as well, you can spritz them for the 3 hours on one side, and then you wouldn't want to spritz them when they've got barbecue sauce on them. So yeah, for the first 3 hours, you can spritz if you want to. Toby asks, will there be a noticeable drop in the 2030 census compared to the 2020 census as a result of died suddenlies and counting only U.S. citizens? If so, how will the corporate media explain it? I think this is a pretty good chance. We need to see the pace of deportations pick up exponentially, and you would expect that to happen with the increased funding to immigration and customs enforcement. At least I'd hope you would expect that. So yes, you will see. And then the died suddenlies thing, I mean, if you go on Ethical Skeptic's channel on X, and he's got the all-cause and cancer mortality data that is building now. It's been a half decade since COVID. It's astounding. It's unexplainable other than ... So I don't know how the media will attempt to explain it. A drop. I think they will lay it all at the feet of immigration. They won't, unless RFK Jr. really goes to the foundations of our nation's pharma kind of industrial complex. Corporate media won't touch that still with a 10-foot pole. So they'll probably blame it on immigration. Let's end with this. James asks, if you had 60 seconds to wake up the average American to the spiritual and cultural battle we're in, what would you say? Here's what I would say, and I don't think it would even take 60 seconds. Assume that China already knows what you're looking at online, what you have said in your home, knows every single detail about your life, as long as there is any sort of smart device around you. And assume that at someday, all of that will be made public. Just assume that. I think that accomplishes two things. It might be convicting as far as you're not ever really private. You're just not. And the second thing is there is real evil in this world. It's a place like China. It is an evil force, I believe, in this. At least its government, I should say, is an evil force in this world. Are they trying to do well for their citizens, or for whatever reason, well for China, whatever China means to them? I'm sure that they think that they are. But I think that touches a lot of bases. One, we're not really that secure from a foreign threat like China. Two, it convicts them that you're not really living a private life ever. And are you really sure that everything you think you're doing in private is really good? And three, I think it just illustrates there is evil in this world. I'm not sure the cultural touchstones that you hear being talked about, important though they are, I just don't think addressing those straight up necessarily will wake people up. But I think attacked like that, where you just kind of shake people and say, this is how insidious some of these elements are. And are you really sure that you're not living your life on a Jumbotron? I don't know, something like that. That's going to do it for Friday. Bella and I will be back at it again tomorrow for No Suck Saturday. It's actually going to be another edition of Ask Izzy, Ask a Nurse Who Knows, Ask Izzy, I-Z-Z-Y, Ask Izzy AskIzzyNSS@gmail.com if you have a health and medicine related question that you would like to have her answer sometime on No Suck Saturday. That will do it for Friday, as I said. To see you tomorrow. If I don't see you tomorrow, back at it again on Monday.